The Kirby franchise is known for being incredibly accessible but offering one of the most brutal challenges in their post-games at the same time. A perfect example is the extra mode of Kirby's Return to Dreamland, where Kirby's health energy is basically halved. There are less healing items and regular enemies vary in their growth while being more powerful. So what happens if we apply this challenge from the get-go and add some extra rules as well? In addition to the already fairly difficult hard mode, we cannot use any copy abilities, shield to block an attack, and as one final touch have to restart the whole game if we die. While I expected roughly 2 or 3 attempts to happen, I could have never imagined how hard this challenge actually turned out to be. This is how I attempted the hardest Kirby's Return to Dreamland challenge. This might be a bit hard, well that's the whole point. Our first try started rather pleasant since I remember the game pretty accurately, maybe a little too accurately. Yeah, getting rid of old habits will be actually the first task to overcome. Once we got accustomed to the rules, the first major difference we encountered are adjusted mini-bosses. Normally these enemies don't pose any danger even in this challenge, but because they are way more aggressive and use new moves, they can easily give you problems if you don't focus. After overcoming this fight, we steamrolled through the starting world with ease, and it was time for the first proper boss of this game, Wispy Woods. In the regular adventure, Wispy Woods poses no challenge at all, but here it's the complete opposite. Besides the already explained differences in the hard mode, it's the boss fights, which got the most substantial changes in their design as well as skills. Each of them act faster, stronger and utilize new moves, making them pretty overwhelming if you're not prepared. But this happened to me as I underestimated all the new tricks I did not see coming. The problem with the Wispy fight and why he's so difficult in the first place is the layout of the arena. Since Wispy is a stationary tree, the only options to hide are either staying extremely close to him in order to dodge his distant attacks, or the complete opposite. What's more is how he likes to let all sorts of objects fall from his bushes, making flying risky as well. I think you'll see the problem here. Wherever I try to hide, I need to constantly see his attacks coming and react just in time to not get any unnecessary hits. In an extremely close battle, we barely managed to beat the tree and continue our journey. Damn, really close. Really close one. A rough start. The next world was largely going well, but I quickly noticed something. There's a distinction between certain enemies and how much damage they deal. Environmental hazards nearly half our energy with only one hit, and the same applies to touching a Gordo, an extremely common foe in almost every level. Also, there are certain types of enemies which stick to Kirby and can deal massive damage, so while we are lucky enough to find enough healing items, we also have to take care which kind of foes or attacks hit us. Fortunately, the second boss, Mr. Duta, was way easier thanks to the reason I mentioned in the Wispy fight. There's a lot of space to run, and he even dropped a healing item, which actually saved our life. Thanks to the third world being based around water, there aren't actually many noteworthy dangerous places to mention. Kirby's quite mobile underwater, and with some concentration, this world is a cakewalk. By this point, you may be wondering about the other dimensions and super abilities, a big part of the game. In regular instances, you get the chance to inhale powerful abilities that go beyond every normal one. Although they destroy absolutely everything on their way, you mainly use them to open up other dimensions where you have to run for your life and beat a mini-boss at the end. Since this is an any % run and we are not allowed to use copy abilities at all, I decided to simply leave them behind. Going to the third world, I was a little unsure what to expect from the next boss, the puffy fish. There's still the benefit of running from his attacks, but during the second phase he blows himself up and sometimes even covers nearly the whole screen. Playing it safe, there was nothing to lose and we should move ahead. Nice. Onward to World 4. By this point, the levels actually started to get more dangerous. Slippery surfaces and more bottomless pits were no deal breaker by itself, but added to the tension. As long as we play slowly without taking any risks, this world should be no problem as well. At least, I thought so. The shooting section in the first level introduces the cannons in a more threatening way. Instead of simply shooting us from a cannon to cannon, this time we have to time our button press, and even though the abyss just beneath me should have been warning enough, I simply pressed the button. Well, there we go, without hesitation. My confidence after coming this far without a failed attempt was the breeding ground for this mistake. Nonetheless, I shrugged it off. After all, at least one death was bound to happen. I think you can see the problem here. The levels are a part of the game as well, and I should not underestimate even the most easy part of the game. Without any further distractions, I continued my way up until the third world, where Without any further distractions, I continued my way up until the third world, where we faced the fish again. Even though we beat him on our first try, this time the tables turned, and he could ultimately get the win. No! Was this happening because I felt safe? Was I too reckless in my skills? In order to understand why I lost there, it's necessary to see what I was doing wrong from the beginning. You see, along the regular sucking, Kirby is able to super suck in this game, which allows him to inhale multiple objects at once and heavy big ones. The reason why this ability is so important are projectiles. Most of the bosses throw more than one projectile at the same time, which makes dodging as well as attacking incredibly difficult. You have either the option to get around and having no means to deal damage, or inhale one or two projectiles and get hit by the next one. The super suck, however, lets you inhale all of them without a problem, which I should have used much earlier. With this knowledge, we started another run and could finally catch up to where we first died. But this wasn't the only difficult level from this world. Just after completing level 1, the next course is challenging for a completely different reason. As I stated before, most of the time we are lucky enough to find healing items here and there. But this level expects us to play a good bunch of this whole thing without healing. On top, there's a fight with another mini-boss at the final part of the course. Still waiting, but against the odds, we beat the and cleared our way through. The rest of the world has no significant impact on us, so it was finally time to face off our next main enemy, Goliath. This boss is probably one of the toughest ones, since he's able to make the battlefield smaller the more the brawl goes on, has multiple distance as well as short range attacks, and can surpass his power level over 9000. The only opportunity to hide from his skills are the small gaps on the floor, and without them, the fight would be over in a moment. Both of us were knocking on heaven's door, and in one essential last hit moment, it was either him or I who did an immense mistake. Goku Ape tried to finish me off with his power waves, the perfect opportunity to hide and wait until I could counter. Despite this advantageous situation, I lost my cool and tried to go for the kill, only to get killed for being impatient. Although we failed once again in World 4, somehow I didn't feel bad at all. It was the first time we fought a legitimate, honest battle without any cheese, and because no one was ever able to clearly get the upper hand, it actually felt like the first honest loss. Back to the start. Catching up takes a while, and even though nothing particular exciting happened meanwhile, I noticed something. Where Wispy once gave us a hard time, we can beat him now without taking a single hit. All of our failed attempts made us stronger against enemies that seemed too powerful at first, but doable if we learn their patterns. The same could be applied to the Goku Ape, and after an action-packed second encounter, we can finally win and proceed with World 5, Nutty Noon. What makes this world so dangerous in the first place is its setting. Being in the sky, it's only natural for this world to have countless of bottomless pits to fall into. One thing I haven't talked about are optional items that are often only used when you're going for completion. The reason why I never use them is because Kirby cannot fly while holding an item. Playing it as safe as possible, I try to avoid situations where I make myself immobile. But why is this important for this world? Well, because this happened. Probably in the week from Monday to Friday. Wait, I totally forgot about this. This was just stupid. What I actually meant...
You're a fucking idiot.
This... Kinda stupid as well, but let me explain a certain problem I was not aware of. It happened with a death before, but this was the point where I truly realized it. Jumping with the intention to inhale a foe while landing on the next platform is just a horrible idea. It's basically the same as with items. When Kirby keeps something in his mouth, I'm not able to fly, which puts me in these situations. It took me 3 moronic deaths to realize it, but better late than never, right? Something that gets more annoying the more we die is simply running back. During these loser runs, nothing happens and it's not like the level or bosses change, and when you have the time to think about all sorts of stuff, it becomes super apparent how slow Kirby in this game walks. Normally, running should serve the purpose of, you know, being faster, but in this game, running is actually just as fast as walking. The reason why running is implemented in the first place is to simply perform dash attacks. Nothing more, nothing less. With some resistance, we once again reach the World 5. And could actually climb to the top, only the boss left. The Grand Duma is a more powerful variations of the mini-bosses in the other dimensions. Unfortunately, we have never fought them, so it's not like I have experience in battling this kind of opponent in any way. As you can probably guess, this disadvantage should be my downfall, as I choked especially in the beginning of the fight and got hit by all sorts of attacks. Just when it seemed like I got the hang out of it, a surprising attack in the second phase caught me. Yet another failed attempt. While we are running back, I think it's a good moment to explain why all these bosses are so hard in the first place in a challenge like this. As you probably know, Kirby games tend to be rather easy and you can tank a lot of hits until you actually die, unlike in Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze for example, where you can only get 2 hits. Both games are aware of how they are handling health and therefore adjust their boss fights to the circumstances. In Donkey Kong, bosses give the perfect amount of time to react and often their projectiles are slow enough to position yourself in the right place. These enemies are built around the low health count of Donkey Kong, whereas in Kirby it's the complete opposite. Since Kirby is able to take so many hits, the developers were free to implement as many wild, fast and unpredictable attacks as they wanted, since there should be no problem in losing health. The bosses of Return to Dreamland are basically designed around the idea of hitting you with certainty, which again is not unreasonable when playing under normal conditions. After all, you're usually allowed to use copy abilities or the shield to reduce damage in case you have no time to react, but I suppose now you can see why this challenge and especially the bosses are so hard in the first place. We are basically like Donkey Kong in a Kirby game, and because Kirby is so slow, as I mentioned before, it becomes even harder to just simply dodge an attack. This is not to say that Return to Dreamland follows a poor design philosophy. If anything, our repeated attempts just prove how feasible each of those bosses are if you know what to expect, so it's not like they are poorly designed or unfair. Returning to the point I was trying to make, as you can see, the second attempt against the Grand Duma poses no challenge at all because we were prepared and knew his patterns. With that being said, it was finally time to leave Planet Pop and reach our final destination. Luckily, Halkandra merely consists of 2 worlds, one of them having only 3 levels, so without wasting any more time, we started in the Egglands. I was immediately introduced to a lot of dangerous hazards like bottomless pits, environmental obstacles and many enemies. It's clear right from the start that this world is probably going to be the hardest one due to its length, but I proceeded with caution. After clearing a good bunch of the first level, flashbacks of past mistakes returned. The cannons. Obviously, this section wasn't in our favor considering how many one-hit deaths awaited us. Instead of watching out to not get shot to the ground this time, we had to carefully time our move in order to not get squished. Everything did go smoothly until the final part, because I didn't know what would happen if you would press the button too early and bonk against the press. I was worried Kirby would simply fall to the ground without a chance to correct your mistake. Panicking and would just go down, I spammed the button on the remote endlessly, not realizing Kirby would just bump into the cannon again. Consequently, the game detected this as another input and launched me into yet another failed attempt. At this point, all of these deaths become rather exhausting. Like mentioned before, it would be quite understandable to go down during a boss, and the hardest part of the game, the final, was still yet to come. With a sophisticated plan in mind, I tried to catch up again, nearly died a few times on my way, but thankfully catch up without any further losses. And here comes my 5 million IQ plan into play. As you have seen, many deaths happen because of simple cheese during one of these levels, often due to insta-death situations like bottomless pits or squishing. In order to prevent such a thing to happen in the future, I decided to basically pause the challenge in World 6 and return to the regular save file that was required to unlock the hard mode. Here I want to explore all level until the final boss, to not get surprised by any further unexpected events anymore, and finally conclude this challenge. To keep things exciting, obviously I'm not going to train any bosses we haven't fought yet. The sole purpose of this excursion is to simply avoid any more repetitive losers walks to where we died. Or to put it in very basic terms, I'm cheating and we all know the rules. If you're aware and mention it yourself, you're allowed to do it, so here we go. Left, left, right, up, left, right. Something went wrong again.
Welcome back to yet another Channel Gex video.
This training turned out to be the probably smartest decision during the whole fiesta. The last two worlds are fairly difficult for being a Kirby game, and despite the fact I get familiar with them, it's not like the challenge vanishes afterwards. I will still have to overcome all these obstacles again, but luckily the last world only features 3 levels and doesn't take too long. After getting through world 5 with relative ease, it was finally time to face off the probably most interesting boss in this mode. Notice how I mentioned mode, since the Metal General functions fundamentally different from every enemy before. In the regular adventure, all you have to do is simply defeat its small body, whereas hard mode adds 2 extra phases to this whole brawl without healing in between. Sounds extremely harsh for a Kirby game? Normally yes, but you don't have to start from the beginning when dying, a luxury we do not have. So in order to overcome this stepping stone of a fight, we have to play nearly perfectly throughout the match, and especially avoid damage during the first phase. Much to everyone's surprise, I beat Metal General on my first try, and the only thing left was the final. All 3 levels of the last world are no real problems per se, with the exception of one mini-boss which was actually harder than the Metal General himself. Fortunately nothing happened, and at last we reached the climax of Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the first time. Before entering, let me explain what makes this upcoming battle, not only in this case, but in general, so dangerous. Newer players might not be aware, but Kirby finals like to go on for quite some while with multiple phases to overcome. Sometimes you get healed, but often there's an extended period of time to survive before such healing is graced upon you, and just like with the Metal General, it's just a matter of endurance. I didn't train for this, but I have the whole climax still very detailed in my mind and know what to expect. First, we have to beat our starting subject, Landia. On paper, there's nothing troublesome about this battle, but we already learned to never underestimate our opponent, and it would be a shame to lose to the basic appetizer to the final. Second, the shmup section. Again, not difficult theoretically, but there are squishing moments again, and they're an instant KO. Staying patient and not getting overwhelmed by the side-scrolling is the key to victory for the purpose of reaching our next destination. Third, the Lore Star Cutter. Our hardly repaired ship turns against us and is the second boss in this ongoing struggle. Going by my memory, it shouldn't be too hard though, and there's enough space to dodge all the attacks or react just in time. These are the 3 main hurdles before getting to the real deal, so here we go. The climax of this challenge is about to start. To fully focus on this battle, I tried to stay silent for the most part and act like I did not have the pressure of an audience on my back. While this is the final, you have to simply memorize all the attacks and do not get greedy. The Super Suck is a lifesaver, as Margolor often fires multiple projectiles at once, making it easy to counter with huge damage. The only deal breaker is a massive laser. I did not test the damage output of this massive skill, but going by its appearance, it would not surprise to instantly die. Dealing a good amount of damage, Margolor enters the next phase and shows a special gimmick, super abilities. Just like with the Grand Duma, it's required to use super abilities in this fight, so no cheating in this case.
In this cheat code.
In the regular game, there are different super abilities, but all of them are strong enough to win the rest of the battle. Sadly, I take a small hit, but only taking one is perfectly fine and a great start to this ultimate fight. Margulo's first phase is finished and we're confronting our last foe. It's probably unnecessary to mention since this is the final boss, but this battle is difficult for multiple reasons. Although we are in the lucky position to continue with a good bunch of our health, it's not like they're pulling back with this boss. Margulo's soul is arguably even harder than his initial appearance, and even with copy abilities, it's fairly difficult, and because we are using none, I always have to survive for multiple seconds to even get one small chance to strike back. It doesn't start very promising, already taking another hit at the start where I misjudged a normally easy attack to dodge, then another hit, again usually uncomplicated to avoid, but after streaming for 3 hours, concentration starts to fall short. Still, we didn't get this far to die in an unfashionable manner like this, so I collected myself and continued. Unlike with the regular Margulo, some of the Soul's attacks seem to instantly kill me at this point, with a laser and black hole, maybe even a one hit at full health. While both of them are unproblematic to dodge, there's one major problem that could end this promising run in a snap: Margulo's Soul's super abilities. Right, not ours, but his super abilities. Surprisingly enough, I'm able to avoid his ice hammer despite looking extremely hard to evade, but his energy balls are completely different. Even though it sounds predictable by simply staying in the right position, I thought staying in the corner like a 90% of this battle would prove itself to be safe, but unfortunately we receive a massive hit, bringing us to near death. Whatever will happen now, we cannot take damage anymore. The battle becomes closer and closer as all of a sudden one enemy drops a little health, turning the tables against the opponent. Nonetheless, it's not over, and after playing perfectly throughout the rest of the battle, we inhale our last enemy, throw out our last shot, and end this last battle once and for all. Yeah! Ending this brutal fight against all the odds first try and concluding this challenge. During the course of this video, I think the duality of Kirby's difficulty became fairly apparent. Kirby's Return to Dreamland and basically every second title can either be the most easy platform in existence or toughest challenge you ever tried. It's up to you how you flip the coin, and the hard mode of Return to Dreamland is quite demanding, even without these restrictions we implemented. Since the very first Kirby's Dreamland for the Game Boy, there was always the option to make your life hell if you wish so, but we overcame this inferno of a challenge and remained. Along this project, many viewers often suggested to soften the rules, give myself checkpoints or other jokers, but it's not about simply winning. Once you set yourself a goal, you're going to reach it, and as long as you try, you eventually make it. The hard mode of Return to Dreamland Deluxe seems to further increase the damage by adding even more enemies to the mix, so why not try for yourself in this remake? Thanks to everyone who watched this challenge live, and maybe we're going to test our skills soon enough again.
This is why Gex Return to Media Dimension should be a thing. Investigate that subscribe button and like in order to get linked by Gex personally.